Hey team, super nice to have you here. It's a
Hello,
pleasure to
Pedro.
get to know you through this way. I've been recommended by one of my colleagues, and she was like reading all your posts, and she was like, "Oh, this person looks amazing." Then I was like, "Oh, looking into you," and I was like, "Okay, let's see if we will be available for this conversation." And I'm very glad that you took the the invitation. So
Thank you
welcome.
for having me. Yeah, looking forward to it, of course.
So, Tim, you have a full life behind you, and I think what would be really useful is if you share a bit about what was your journey to get here. I know that you're now working with something very specific, which has to do with the different ways of solving the climate, um, and perhaps you can just share how you got here and how was your journey, and just take some time and share that with us.
Yes, yeah, happy to. Thanks, Pedro. Um, well, I sometimes feel a bit like an imposter syndrome, like I don't belong here because I'm not a climate strategist by origin. I'm not a professor. I'm not an earth science professional. I don't have a decades of climate activism behind me, but actually I'm coming from the side. Back some years ago, I studied political science. That is still deeply ingrained in how I think. But then through some curves in my life, actually worked most of it in human resources. So I worked with companies mainly on the talent acquisition, recruiting, skills assessment, aptitude testing, potential analysis, etc. processes, and also related trainings, specifically interview trainings, and also since we worked internationally, the whole cultural aspect of it, intercultural communication. Unconscious biases, diversity trainings, etc. And from there on, in 2020, I left that career, and that came since 2019 when my children, I have 4 children, they went demonstrating with Fridays for Future, and that was actually my year where I really realized where we are heading with our planet, and that we're actually a lot worse off than I thought. You know, I believe that story that we are told that 2050 will be fine and we'll manage until then. And then I realized, well, we don't have 30 more years to solve this. We really have to hurry up. And so I asked myself, what can I do with my skill set to play a role in saving the planet? And first, I thought, well, I don't have really any relevant talents to solve it. And for that reason, I'm not a sustainability expert. I haven't worked in a sustainability consultancy forever. But then I realized, well, I'm working with people. I'm working with change and transformation, and that's what I then um, developed into a consultancy that is called Planet Groups, and this is what I do. Planet Groups helps companies in the transformation by engaging their employees and supporting employee groups who want to play a role. And from there on, working with employees from like the bottom up or from the inside out, I realized that this is very powerful, very useful, but it needs also a strategy coming from the top. And so I developed some tools like a climate solution game. That's what I play to help companies actually develop that strategy and put the customer in the focus of that strategy, because that's what I think is missing with most corporate strategies. They somehow say they want to reduce emissions, but if it doesn't earn them any money, they do it very half-heartedly. And since 98% of the people working in a company still do their normal jobs, those 2% that try to be a little bit more sustainable, they are not really have such an impact. They may be a little bit less bad, but they're not good. So the question that I'm trying to drive with Planet Groups and with my post on LinkedIn is how do we actually embed this into our economic system and into our money-making processes? Because if we don't make money with it, we don't do it. And so obviously that requires political changes, but it also within the current political framework and within the current incentives, companies could actually do a lot more if they realize that there is a customer involved.
Cool. And
Yeah.
can you give an example of like a case where like looking at this customer-centric perspective has helped an organization to like make better decisions and also look from the perspective of the customer and profitability in order to make some change?
Yeah. Well, I'm still working on it. So would love to have more success stories. But it's to give one example, the whole aspect of circularity. You know, thinking of your product as a service, and instead of selling it, actually renting it to your client and then getting it back from your customer after use. That not only gives you access to the resources that are embedded in the product, and you don't have to, extract them again, but you can actually, if they are designed to be repaired and reused, you can more easily put them back into the production cycle. But you also have that constant link to your customer, that will then, if it is well designed, if they're happy with your products, have to buy another product of your company. So you retain your customer, don't have to go through all that effort to win new customers all the time. So that aspect of circularity actually is a very strong element of customer centricity. But the other very important question I try to put into the heads of the companies I work with is, how can you help your customers to become regenerative and more sustainable? Because every company has that somehow on their agenda. No company really has solutions for it. So if I have clients, regardless whether that's agriculture or food or pharmaceuticals or mobility, or they all want solutions how they can reduce their emissions and extraction and how they can make their products more impactful for the planet. So if I can offer them solutions to get there, I can make a lot of money with it. But for that, I have to engage with my customers and think actually from their perspective, what do they need? How can I offer it to them? And then also engaging them in the regeneration part of a product and etc. That's I try to get the customers to think of, in a regenerative world, what will we offer? What are the products that the people and the planet really needs? How can we design the product so that it really adds impact on one hand, on the positive side, and of course reduce the emissions and extraction as much as possible. But I try to make them think not only on the reduction side, but also on the positive side. What is the impact, the value of what we offer and we bring into the world, which perhaps may also mean letting go of some products that are just too harmful, but then there are new ones.
Got it. And just like what is the vision for your work? And I see you done some framework building. I don't know if you have it with you, but maybe you want to share how this framework works, how those play games work, and just share it a bit how your thinking is there.
Yes, yeah, it's that that you've seen on the climate solution game. So anyone is seeing that, if they want to check planetgroups.net, and then they see on the homepage the link to the climate solution game. It's really, people talk about scopes 1, 2, 3 as a greenhouse gas protocol to reduce emissions, their own direct emissions and their own indirect emissions, and the indirect emissions that are embedded in what they buy, and the machinery, the components, and the use of the product, and the commute of their employees. And that's all very, very important. But I'm trying to add what we call scope 0 and scope 4. I know those terms are used in many different ways, so I have to explain how I understand them. So scope 4 is not making my product a little bit better when you use it. So like produce a toaster that uses less energy, but actually producing maybe not a toaster, but maybe some tools that I don't know, remove carbon, or some tools that improve soil quality. I mean, obviously, the toaster is maybe a long way to go, but we have to ask ourselves: is this product that we bring into the market actually helping my client to reduce their footprint? And a slightly better toaster is a very very limited way of helping my client to reduce their footprint. But maybe if I give them a solution how they can bake their own bread, or and maybe that's a difficult way. But it's a difference whether I produce a solar panel or a motorcycle, and whether I produce organic soil improvement tools or a pesticide, or whether I produce like tourism to walk through the mountains and maybe even help in regenerating an area, or whether I sell an air flight to the Maldives. So they're different. I have a different impact with what I produce. And when I engage actually in products that really add value to the planet, and then the whole aspect of how I communicate this and how I make an effort to change the entire system, both in terms of communication, in terms of politics, that then what I call scope zero, and becomes part of my business strategy. So I look at companies like Patagonia, for example, that really have a wholehearted strategy where their products and the message they portray and their action and the money they spend, it's all part of one narrative of what this company is for. So they're really very consistent in that they want to do their part in saving the planet through their products, with their customers, and through everything else that they do as well. So it really takes this wholehearted approach where scope 1, 2, 3, the reducing emissions and extraction is only one part of the story, and interacting with the entire system, what we call scope zero, and focusing on products that actually add value to the planet are maybe even the more important parts of the climate strategy.
Yeah, but I understood. But doesn't that require the company's management to have this understanding? Because it's not, I mean, I think the motivation for a company's manager or CEO, it wouldn't be like if they are thinking about making more profit, only they wouldn't shift their strategy in accordance to that. I mean, I'm pretty familiar with the Patagonia story, and I think since a week the whole world is. But and also like I was involved in setting up um, a framework for that that helped companies to also become purpose or steward ownership companies
Mm-hmm.
and like shift. So I'm pretty familiar with that, but I wonder, yeah, I wonder what it takes to do that, because for me it takes, I mean, it takes the people that own the company first. It's like the ownership structure of the company. If the company is publicly traded, then they need to kind of optimize for shareholder value, which means they cannot really think like that. So yeah, I wonder how one, like what are the steps to kind of convince a company leader to shift their strategy and think in this holistic way?
Um, yeah, obviously that's a good question, right? So we have like the political framework, we have the regulatory framework, we have the economic incentivization that is all currently not leading companies towards regeneration and sustainability. And we have an ownership structure of publicly listed companies that's also not encouraging them to be very planet oriented. Totally with you. But when you work with companies now, so that's why I'm saying driving also system change must be part of your strategy if you're serious about the planet. So you cannot be serious about the planet and reduce your emissions and don't do anything about the system. That's just not consistent. That's really crucial. So, for example, the Axel Springer Group, that's a media corporation that has, I think, 13 billion of turnovers. They have a footprint of 400,000 tons CO2 across the group, and they try to reduce that, which is nice. But only the one flagship newspaper, the German Bild newspaper, if all of the Bild's newspaper readers would reduce their meat consumption by 50%, they would already save 320,000 tons, so almost the same amount as the entire group, just by one newspaper readers reducing meat consumption by 50%. So them making a serious effort to reduce their footprint is good, but it's completely irrelevant compared to what they could do as a media company if they change their core messaging and the core product and the core impact they have on society through what they do. People will not buy it that they're actually concerned about the climate because they're not. If they were, they would also engage in climate communication and trying to get their readers to eat less meat, just as an example. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
but I mean, it's an example. I mean, if they cared about anything in that newspaper, they wouldn't, this newspaper didn't need to exist, right? Like, it's like the newspaper,
but the same,
they
maybe
are
the Bild
famous
Zeitung is
because
a
they
bad
don't care
example.
about anything.
You
They
take any
work because they don't care.
But take any mainstream newspaper, take the Berlin Tagesspiegel or the Stuttgarter Neue Nachrichten. So not just the Boulevard, not just the Yellow Press. They could be so easily influence the public to do different things if they wanted to. So it's really about having a consistent strategy. But coming back to that ownership part, it's about thinking about, do we have different ways how we make money? Is it just the current way, or do we have different ways how we can make money? And can we perhaps make money as well, maybe even make more money if we engage on a trajectory that is actually climate aligned and sustainable? Um, when we play the climate solution game, the one core message is that it's not the responsibility of a company to solve the climate crisis, because that's not in our DNA as a company. It's not, we have a social responsibility somehow, but basically it's our responsibility to deliver products that our clients want, because that's what they pay us for, right? That's the core business logic of a company. But if you now see that we have an old system that is driving us toward extinction, and it's driving us toward more and more catastrophes, so it's going to change, and we see these changes happening already everywhere. We see it from societies demanding change, from governments changing their behavior, from financial investors changing, from banks changing their behavior, from technological disruptions. So we see the prices going up for resources. So we see all these drivers for change, and so we see there's a big transformation, and we can ignore that transformation and say this will go away anymore. Which of course it won't. Or we can try to obstruct it and try to still live as much as possible off the old system and get rich with it. Which then at some time it will collapse, and then we won't have any offerings for the new economy. Or we can actually pioneer that transformation as a company and think, okay, now we are going to go ahead and we'll develop and design the products that we'll need in the new regenerative economy, because there's no doubt that this regenerative economy will come. It's just a question whether it'll come by design or whether it'll come by catastrophes. And we hopefully, of course, try to limit the catastrophes and have as much of the transformation be done by design. But there is an end to our current economic system. That's physical fact. It's it just can't go on like this, neither on the supply side nor on the waste side. And we're seeing it actually coming to an end. It's a question: do we have 20 more years, or 40 more years, or maybe even 60 more years, or only 10 more years? Nobody knows. But the current inflation and the supply chain disruption everywhere, I mean, that's just the beginning. So as a company, I can wait and hope that it'll go away, but that doesn't make sense. If the mobility companies had foreseen the current trends and had actually started earlier to electrify their fleet and to invest in new battery models, etc., I mean, they could be way ahead of everybody else, because they would be able to deliver any electric vehicles now, and the customers wouldn't have to wait. They could, have invested in charging infrastructure, and together with supermarkets, they could have invested in actually producing the power and supplied it. They could be monopolizing the market if they had thought about this. If they not only had thought about it, if they had executed it 20 years ago or 10 years ago. But they slept and waited until it was unavoidable. So it's really the question, if you still want to wait, or if you actually say, no, I see this coming, so I'm going to prepare my company so that I can still make money.
I mean, some companies did try. I mean, even General Motors has tried to build electric electric cars. I think in 2008 they had a fleet of 60,000 cars in America, but somehow the Bush administration managed to get those cars to be reclaimed. So there are lots of people that tried, and I think that's also one of the implications, right? Sometimes you try at the wrong time. Even like if you look at the history of Tesla, how hard it was for them to be able to establish this in the world because nobody gave them credit, nobody believed on them. So it's kind of like I think the question is also like when you
Yes.
can do it, when you can shift the momentum, because if you don't shift the momentum, you need to be a lonely walker, and that it's always more expensive and more risky, right? And
But now
usually,
Tesla is more valuable than the next than the three largest automotive companies together, I think, or the top
yes,
five.
because yes, because you have somebody that was able to take the risk, which
Yeah.
is pretty unusual in the corporate world. So,
Mm.
but yes, I can see it. I just keep wondering around the same question. What are the frameworks that, or what are the ways you can really convince the leaders of like established organizations to do that? Or is it a way where you just need to work with the leaders that are purpose first and they already see the way that it works, and then and that's the way to do it? Or do you need to go and find this framework to convince the others, and how does that work?
Well, I think we should do both, but it's more important to work with the leaders of the mainstream companies because they are the mainstream. So, but anything, the law of innovation it says that after 16%, when the early adopters are completely won for a new framework, a new technology, then the early mass market comes, and then the whole market tips. So after the first 16%, you have enough, so you don't have to work with all the mainstream leaders, but focus on the early adopters, and if they really want it, but of course, they need a lot of courage and determination to get their own company to follow suit, and that's, I think, where employee engagement and processes like the Planet Groups process can also come into the picture to really make everybody buy into that new strategy and really wholeheartedly pursue it as a business strategy and not as a okay, nice to have. Somebody's told us we have to do this, so let's do it. So it has to be business driven, and you have to see the signs on the wall and prepare your company for it. And,
Yeah, I mean, I do see there are lots of
mm,
companies already changing their behavior because of climate risks, and they can see that their supply chains and all of their operations kind of are exposed to some climate risks, and then they start taking decisions. Especially, I think there are some of these more activist funds that kind of have some seat on the boards of some companies, and they are challenging these narratives and saying why you're not doing anything
mm.
and so on. Yeah, but I still, yeah, I still have a hard time seeing a lots of the like it needs to be the momentum, and you, as you said, either you do it by design or you do it as a response to a catastrophe.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can the moment I see the second one as a more plausible scenario, but like I'm happy to be surprised about ways where you can kind of shift it to the other way.
Yes, well, we're all working towards it, right? Everywhere and with all the means that we have. I'm through my HR work. I'm still doing a little bit in it. I've you know touched base with what the normal people and normal companies and normal management think. And so, for example, I've recently had a lot of interviews with people that were in purchasing and procurement, and I always ask them, so what do you think about circularity, the customer as a supplier? Uh, and they were like, "What? Circularity? Yeah, I've heard of it, and no, I don't know what this is. Can you explain this to me?" So it's just not at all mainstream thinking. So we really have a long way to make it that. Um, to make people understand that this is not a choice. It's just a question when. And am I going to be pioneering this and leading the trend and have it established, or am I going to wait until somebody else does it? Yeah, everybody talks about innovation. Everybody talks about being the technology leader, and we have to be the technology leader on resource efficiency and on reuse of material and design to repair and design to reuse. We have to upcycle. We have to look at mine the electric garbage and not mine the mines everywhere. We have to work with the waste we produce and see it as a resource. I know that's not easily done, but that's what I mean about scope 4. What products are we offering? Am I offering technologies to win resources from waste, to separate waste, to reuse it, to upcycle it? That's you can make a lot of money with that.
Yes, and what are the examples of companies that you see um, that see doing good work? I mean, for example, I think like the Ellen MacArthur Foundation is doing very good work on like educating people about like circular economy and what you can do, and working also with major brands. What are like organizations that you see or case studies that you see where this organization has done a good.
Well, I see amazing people doing amazing work everywhere, especially like, we know each other through LinkedIn, and it's full of really engaged and great people. And you hear of new technological breakthroughs and how to a new battery technology or a new glue that you can more easily dissolve after use of a product, so you can retain the components of a product. And so there's lots of awesome and amazing work. Do I know of many companies that have really wholeheartedly adopted the strategy? And there was recently an analysis in February out by the New Climate Institute of the climate strategy of 25 big corporates from Google and Amazon and IKEA and Unilever and etc. And 21 out of those 25 were given a low credibility or very low credibility for their climate strategy. And there was three had a moderate, and one had a reasonable, and none had a good one. You can look it up. It's also on our website on Planet Groups. So I don't think there are so many examples that are really doing a consistently great job. Recently, I heard that Apple is now aiming and actually getting there at really completely recollecting all the rare earth and metals from their iPhones and reusing them, which it was great news. But Apple, as a monster company, could obviously do a lot more to transform and drive the transformation of societies in general beyond just reusing their own products, which is good. I mean, they're trendsetter, and they can really make others want to follow their example. But of course, it's not consistent if they don't consider their impact on the whole system and just try to reuse their own materials. Again, it's great. It's a good example. It's important. But the big tech companies, all of them, they could save the world themselves. The Google, Microsoft, Apple, and Facebook, and Amazon, if they wanted those five, they could save the planet.
Yeah, possibly together in partnership with the Chinese government.
That would follow.
Although they would need them as a partners, I think.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you would just be like saving what a part of the planet. I think we in the West also always very biased to think that the planet is the West, but I think the planet is a bit beyond that, and we would always need to have them as partners to do
Yes,
anything.
but people orient their behavior on the behavior they see in other people, and countries orient their behavior in the behavior they see from other companies, other countries. So if the West would really embark on that journey wholeheartedly, it wouldn't be without an effect on China as well. and the other
Yeah,
countries.
I think it's more likely the other way around though, that
Yes.
China will do it and we will follow. But like, yes,
In
the
technology, it looks like that, definitely. Yeah.
yeah, also like just being able to have the central coordination and be able to actually change things. I think in terms of the climate change, I think in the West we are like in democratic states or like the Western global community, however you want to say it, NATO countries, whatever, however you want to define it. I think we tend to have a lots of like jurisdiction that makes it really difficult to change some things
Yeah.
fundamentally because there is somebody else to approve this. So I think if you have a country where you can just change things according to whatever you see, then you can do change faster. I'm not saying it's better, but I'm saying that in terms of climate change, I think there is some potential upside there for
Mm.
those non non-democratic states. Yeah,
Now we'll see. What I try to get companies to do is really envision a world in 30 years or 40 years when we have 2 or more degrees warming, and what will their supply chain look like, and what will their markets look like, and how can they still operate under these conditions, and who will buy their products, or what products will people really need then, and when they think about this, then they will both come up with new ideas for what kind of products in their portfolio with their technologies are really important, and focus on those, and then they will obviously try to embark more also on a political process to make sure that the worst can be avoided. But when you preparing for the climate crisis and preventing the climate crisis actually requires the same things. So if you visualize that the climate collapse has actually materialized, and you picture yourself and your company and your house and your family in that, and then you ask yourself, okay, what kind of behavior, what kind of supply chain will I need then, and then you adjust what you do now so that you're prepared for that. That actually helps to prevent it.
and so talking about it, what do you think? Like, plus give us a insight. How does the world look in 30 years? What has changed in your view? How is that world likely to happen? Maybe you can give us three scenarios, but since you've been thinking so much about it,
Well, you obviously see a lot of ecological catastrophes happening that have an impact on destroying infrastructure, and putting a bit stress on societal cohesion, and the functionality of communities, um, and so actually focusing on the fundamentals that we need, which is food and shelter and energy in a local self-sustaining subsistent network, resilience will be crucial, and health. So anything that provides self-sustaining loops, local loops that are independent and resilient, I think, is what we'll need. Um, and then obviously we can achieve that in the societies that are based on values and solidarity and trust and collaboration, and then we can perhaps get through this and have learned a lot, and then we may one day say, well, thank God we had the climate crisis, otherwise we would have never woken up. Or it'll be war and terrorism and complete entrenchment and polarization of societies. And I'm listening to some podcast by a guy called Daniel Schmachtenberger, and he says it's
I know
either
him personally. I
you
actually
know
should
him.
have him here. Yeah,
Oh,
I know him
really?
pretty well.
Wow,
Yeah,
wow, yeah, I'm a great admirer of his, and he says it's between we have two choices: catastrophes or dystopic controlled states.
yeah,
And so he's looking for what he calls the third attractor, and that obviously nobody exactly knows, but it's striving for an open society that can provide its citizens with its meeting its basic needs, um, and yeah, that's what I work for as well. And that's one element to it is strengthening societies, communities, and trust, openness, self-awareness, reflection, and providing, developing an infrastructure and a resilient supply structure that can still provide us with basic food and community and shelter, even if nature is wreaking havoc on us.
interesting. And so right now you are shifting between this like macro vision of the future and then breaking that down into like some small frameworks that can help people to envision how they can be in a better position to make decisions that lead into positive change. Would that reflect your work?
Yeah, that describes it very well. It
And
sometimes feels paradox, but I don't only want to talk. I want to actually do trigger change on the ground. And my field is business, is companies, and so that's where I try to drive change. But what I always say, it's a systemic crisis. It's a system, so you can start everywhere. You can start in your local neighborhood, in your school. You can start as an activist. You can start in your company. You can start in a political party. You can start in an NGO. Um, you can start with the consumer education. You can even start in a marketing agency. You can, be part of the change and the transformation everywhere.
interesting. And so just yeah, just how is it for you? I mean, I'm really curious about your frameworks and how those games work and how it's like a process like let's say I am a CEO of a company, I give you a call and then what would be the steps that you would do to kind of try to to generate impact in this company? How does that look like in practice?
Um, well, to the CEO, obviously, I would ask him or her, that where she or he is at, and what's the target of that person, what he or she actually wants. Does he or she really see where he wants or she wants to take the company to, and would like to engage me with the game to bring the organization along and help them as part of strategy, or that's obviously an important question. But then the game has two parts. The first part is making you realize where the business is in the climate crisis and the transformation, and the second part is providing that framework, that mental structure to identify where to start, and making it, break it down into verticals and into manageable structures. So not something metaphysical that, well, how can I stop the climate crisis? This is beyond my reach as a company. To actually something, okay, this is what I can do in production. This is what I do in product design. This is what I do in marketing. This is what I do in HR. This is what I do in finance. So what people understand and can relate to. Once you have developed that overarching narrative of where you want to be and what purpose you want to deliver on as a company, um, and have that structure. And that structure, to me, the important part is not only has this negative side, which is reducing emission and extraction, but it has the positive side too. That is, what do we deliver? What will our companies, our customers, pay us for? And then try to optimize that, which may not go in 1 year, but optimize what you offer, what your customers pay you for, educate your customers, and change the framework, change the regulation, change the consumption expectations, change the discussion, etc. And then the game can serve three purposes. It can be awareness, education. It can help to brainstorm, come up with ideas, and it can be a starting point for a strategy discussion on exactly that. Visualize, picture ourselves in 20 years, and then start developing a strategy from that vision. In an what's the worst case, and what's the best case, and how can we change our strategy, our product strategy, our marketing strategy, our production processes, so that it helps to that it's more likely that we have the best case scenario. But of
So
course,
you are
it's
in.
also about hedging the risks. It's also about making sure that you are still able to deliver to your products, to your customers.
So you are in the business of like yeah, transformation, right? So you help companies
Yes,
to transform. It's not like and the climate change is just like some of the potential framework that you take to kind of operationalize this transformation or have some tangible input to think about the future, and then that's how you start transforming the company. So that's how you think about it. More like you need to transform the company in a systemic way, rather than just tackling one part, which is
exactly.
like
Let me give you one more example that's maybe more concrete.
I
I'm
love
working with
example.
one media company, and they're online media, so they make money by selling their outreach, so that their clients are not the readers, their clients are the advertising partners, and the more stuff they sell, the more money that company makes, right? So right now they are driving mass consumption. Um, so the question is, what could a better business model look like, and how can they get there? Because by just pursuing the current business model, they are under severe risks, obviously, because with every economic crisis, where do their customers save money? They don't advertise that much. So they are under a lot of stress, and the revenue models in online advertising are fragile anyway. So the question is, what do our business models look like in 20 years, and how can we make them more robust, more resilient? Is an important question to them anyway. Um, so what can they do in short term? They can, they have to, develop traffic. So the question is, how can we transport sustainability and climate topics and resilience and regenerative farming and urban gardening, or local make do DIY tips and tricks, etc. Ride sharing. How can we use all these topics? Electric mobility, the whole aspect of regeneration, of renaturation, to generate traffic. They still sell their traffic to companies that sell their stuff. It's still only one part of the business model that has improved. The core business model is still not good for the planet, but at least it's better to generate traffic with topics around urban gardening than with only catastrophes and the local terrorism and whatever, right? So rather than radicalizing your audience, you may as well engage them with something that has other meaning to them. So that's one part of changing the strategy, and actually identifying that sustainability and the whole aspect of a resilient, cost-effective way of living in a community for the users and readers actually adds value to that, because they all, people are currently under shock with all the price increases, and they're looking for solutions, and they're doing all kinds of stupid things like buying electric radiators or so helping your readers to get through in life, and that way, through a more sustainable lifestyle. Then of course they have to work with their advertising customers, by actually providing different information on the products, by giving special attention to more sustainable products, by giving outreach to actually also other clients that have a different message than consuming less, to like some, the community-based agriculture, etc., or companies that use more regenerative materials, or companies that sell product as a service, or companies that offer sharing options. There are obviously companies that have better products in terms of the planetary footprint than other companies, and try to use their outreach to help those customers, and give them specials, special rates, better prices, etc. So the advertising part is the second part, and the third part is obviously new business models. Maybe they can also offer subscriptions, so people do not have to see any advertising, so they can see their content without advertising, and maybe even pay a green premium. So they have a subscription, and part of that subscription goes to a renaturation project. And they can come up with completely new business models. So invest in other startups that actually have solutions for the future, and through their outreach, by investing in them, they can also help those startups with their good solutions. Let's say like a startup that for reforestation, or a startup that helps you to conserve water, or a startup, different ways. And through their outreach, help these companies to actually get prominence and have an impact faster. So these are the different ways how I try to help them to get to ideas and see the reason, and see the business model behind it. Are there possibly platforms that they can operate themselves, sharing platforms, or where they can make money with their users too? Obviously, platform business is a tricky one, but that's worth thought. All these questions. How can we make money by actually selling less, or at least using less?
Let's see. And that's part of the transformation then.
Yes, that's part of the transfer, because of course everything they do has an impact on their advertising customers, has an impact on, and actually there are many companies that you look for ways how they can market their products, and if you offer them, well, I have a channel that is especially designed for planet positive products, and I have that audience that's interested in these products, they have an advantage compared to any other platform.
Absolutely. If they build that audience, yeah.
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 And by offering that audience, they're building it, so it becomes a self-accelerating process. Systemic change is always in cycles. It's self-accelerating, so we have to create virtuous cycles instead of the current vicious ones.
Very interesting. Yeah, very interesting. And if you have a message to share if with the world, like on like what is the best way for us to start doing this, looking at the world in a way that it can get more sustainable or it can change, what would be that message?
Yeah, no, just distracted.
No worries. I'm also here.
Yes.
I have so many mosquitoes here where I am. You
Okay.
cannot believe how many mosquitoes
Oh,
are around
really?
me right now.
Okay.
Yes,
No,
yes.
we already have autumn in Berlin, 9 degrees. It's just my son coming in. Um, Now, I have many conversations, and one I recently had was also with somebody that was looking for a, direction for his career, and shall I join a sustainability consultancy like Climate Partners or something like that? But are they really actually doing the right things, or just stabilizing the system by selling compensation? Does it really make sense, or shall I go to activism organization, or and then my immediate thought was, as long as you do it with the right attitude, you can have an impact in any position, in any place where you are. And that's also, one of the things that Schmachtenberger says. You go to where you have agency. And if that is just your local kindergarten, or age group swim club, if you help the kids, be good people, and be good, well connected, and maybe bring them into the forest once every 2 months, and show them life in the soil, etc., that has an impact. that has an impact and that changes lives. So it's you have to have faith in that what you do makes a difference, and try to do as much as you can without overburdening yourself. You cannot, we cannot hold the whole planet on our shoulders, and trust that something good will come out of it. It's, I mean, for me also, it's a daily, not a daily struggle, but it hits me sometimes from behind, and tries to strike me down when I read another catastrophic news, and then I think, oh, this is never going to work, and what I do with my kids, and but then I try to, recollect myself and say this is not known. The future is not known. It's still to write. Also, the one Schmachtenberger analogy that I recently heard, and it really touched me, when a bird grows up in the egg, and it comes from the yolk, and the egg white is what it feeds off. And so as that little chick grows up in the egg, inside the egg, it eats all the egg white, which obviously is not sustainable, because at some point in time it's going to be too big for the egg, and all the egg white is gone. So then it's just continue that trajectory. At some point in time, it's obvious that they're both going to die, the egg and the bird. But then they hatch, and and then outside there is no food and everything. And then it really touched me, that analogy, because we don't know if there is a world outside our little egg that's waiting for us. And so it's worth, looking for that.
Very nice. Yeah, that's beautiful. And yes, I think we're coming to the end of our time here. And I wanted to thank you so much for sharing all your experience, your life, and for this process that you've taken. And yeah, it's been a very pleasure to get to know you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Pedro. It was nice talking to you, and I really enjoyed it. And yeah, I hope, something good comes out of it. Somebody's listening to it. At least I had a good
Yeah,
time. They really enjoyed talking to you, and obviously you also have to balance the different spheres where you're in. I have my own sphere, my own house, my own travel, my own trajectory I'm in with my lifestyle. So I make my choices here. I have my friends. I communicate. Some I talk about this or that. With others, I don't. I'm currently supporting Berlin 2030 Volksentscheid, so going also a little bit the political way. I'm doing my LinkedIn little influencing thing where I write what I have in my mind and try to touch people there. And I'm doing my planet groups. I'm also doing HR work, and I'm working on unconscious biases and try to make people aware of how narrow we think, and try to open up to diverse ways of thinking, and to acknowledge that they have feelings, and where they come from, and where they're useful and where they're not. And um, yeah, that's all I can do. And we all have our sphere of influence. We all have our agency. We can try to expand that, but it's not unlimited. It's also, as Schmachtenberger says, very few of us get to choose a new world system. So you have to use the levers that are available to you.
amazing. Yes. Yeah, thanks, Tim, and I hope to see you soon somewhere in Berlin. I'm sure you can come visit us in our office. We're in Kreuzberg. Reach
Yes.
out. We have a nice place there. And yeah, I wish you a wonderful evening with your family. And I'll try to escape from the mosquitoes here before they drink all my blood.
Okay, but apart from the mosquitoes, which I don't see, it looks beautiful. I'd much rather be in your place than in our
Yeah.
autumn like Berlin. But yeah, we'll
Yeah,
see each
but
other in
I have
Kreuzberg.
work to do tonight and not gonna be able to enjoy it, but that's okay.
All right.
All
Thank
right.
you.
So
Take care.
thank you.
Bye,
Have a nice
Pedro.
evening.